In 1995, a man robbed two banks with his face uncovered, convinced lemon juice made him invisible. He wasn't crazy. He was a perfect example of a cognitive bias that makes incompetence feel like expertise. MacArthur Wheeler walked into two Pittsburgh banks in broad daylight, robbed them at gunpoint, and was arrested hours later. His genuine shock? He believed lemon juice on his face would hide him from cameras, a folk myth he took literally. Psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger saw something profound in this case. A pattern where the unskilled are blissfully unaware of their own incompetence. Wheeler wasn't mentally ill or under the influence. He was simply catastrophically wrong about his own abilities. This case sparked a landmark study that revealed a systematic bias. People who lack skill in a domain don't just perform poorly, they lack the very tools to recognize how poorly they're doing. The Dunning-Kruger effect was born, and it explains why confidence and competence so often fail to align. In 1999, Dunning and Kruger at Cornell University tested undergraduates on logic, grammar, and humor, measuring both actual performance and self-assessment. The results were startling. Students in the bottom 25% of performers believed they were above average, ranking themselves in the 62nd percentile on average. Meanwhile, top performers underestimated their abilities, assuming tasks were easy for everyone else. The researchers proposed a dual burden. Incompetent people make poor choices, but their incompetence also robs them of the metacognitive skill to recognize those errors. As Dunning later said, the skills needed to produce a correct answer are essentially the same skills needed to evaluate the accuracy of an answer. If you lack the first, you lack the second. A cruel irony that traps the unskilled in a bubble of false confidence. At the core of the Dunning-Kruger effect is metacognition, our ability to think about our own thinking. Competent people have a well-calibrated internal feedback system. They sense when they're struggling, check their work, and adjust. Incompetent individuals lack this entirely. Dunning and Kruger showed this experimentally. When participants received training in logical reasoning, their self-assessment accuracy improved dramatically. Once they gained the skill, they could finally see how poorly they had performed before. This explains why ignorance feels so much like expertise. The very knowledge needed to spot a deficiency is missing. Without it, people remain confidently wrong, never realizing they need to improve. Humans are terrible at absolute self-assessment, so we rely on social comparison, judging ourselves against others. But if we're surrounded by equally incompetent peers, our inflated self-view is never challenged. This is why the Dunning-Kruger effect thrives in homogeneous groups, echo chambers, or workplaces where feedback is ambiguous or delayed. A 2012 study found that participants who received clear, immediate feedback showed significant reductions in overconfidence. Without feedback, illusions persist. In competitive environments where results are slow to appear, people can go years believing they are exceptional while actually underperforming. The effect isn't just about individual psychology, it's amplified by the social contexts we create. There's also a motivational side to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Overconfidence can serve as a psychological buffer against the anxiety of failure. When low performers in the original study were forced to confront their actual performance, they experienced distress and often dismissed the feedback as unfair or inaccurate. This defensive reaction protects self-esteem in the short term, but prevents learning in the long term. A 2017 study found that people with fragile self-esteem were particularly prone to overestimating their abilities, suggesting the effect is partly a self-esteem maintenance strategy. The ego fights to preserve its own image, even at the cost of growth. This emotional dimension explains why simply telling someone they are wrong rarely changes their mind. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just a lab curiosity, it has serious real-world implications. In medicine, studies show that physicians who perform poorly on diagnostic tests often rate their skills highly, potentially endangering patients. In finance, overconfident investors trade more frequently and earn lower returns. In politics, voters with low political knowledge are most confident in their positions, driving polarization. A meta-analysis confirmed that the correlation between self-assessment and actual performance is modest at best, and weakest among the least skilled. The effect shapes workplace dynamics, academic outcomes, and even public policy. Understanding it is essential for anyone who wants to think clearly, learn effectively, and navigate a world where confidence and competence are often mismatched. The good news is that the Dunning-Kruger effect can be overcome. The key is gaining competence, and with it, the metacognitive ability to recognize limitations. Training in a domain improves both performance and self-assessment. Seeking honest, constructive feedback from trusted sources helps calibrate self-perception. Learning to question your own confidence, especially in areas where you have little experience, is a powerful habit. As Dunning noted, the solution isn't humility, it's knowledge. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. This is the paradox of mastery. True experts are often the most humble because they can see the vast landscape of what remains unknown. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows us that confidence isn't always a sign of competence. If this insight made you think, share it with someone who might need it.